The quiet corners of the Willow Creek Orphanage in rural Ohio often echoed with laughter, footsteps, and the rustle of hurried papers, except for one room at the end of the west hallway, where Emily Harper kept to herself. At 9 years old, she had grown into a soft-spoken, perceptive child with big, thoughtful eyes and a calmness that set her apart from the other children. Her hair, always neatly tied back with ribbon, framed a face that rarely betrayed emotion. To the untrained eye, she seemed content, perhaps even happy. But those who knew her understood that Emily lived behind invisible walls. She had arrived at the orphanage 5 years prior, at the age of 4, after a brutal car accident had claimed both her parents on a winter night. She had survived miraculously, with only a broken wrist and a small scar above her eyebrow. The trauma, however, had lodged itself deeper than any doctor could reach. Since then, 5 families had tried to adopt her. 5 times she had sat in the welcoming room with couples who brought gifts, promises, and hopeful eyes. And 5 times she had smiled politely, thanked them for their kindness, and said no. No tantrums, no explanations, just a gentle refusal that left everyone, especially the hopeful parents, confused and quietly devastated. Mrs. Langford, the orphanage director, was a firm but compassionate woman in her 60s with decades of experience caring for children. She often found herself watching Emily from the doorway, trying to make sense of the silence the girl carried with her. There was nothing outwardly unusual about Emily's behavior. She participated in group activities, helped the younger children with their reading, and kept her room spotless. Yet something inside her remained untouched, unreachable. One spring morning, a new couple arrived at the orphanage. Ben and Claire Whitman were in their early 40s, both educators from a small town in northern Ohio. Claire had a warm, patient energy, with soft eyes that noticed the small things, a child's drawing, a misplaced book, a nervous glance. Ben, a high school art teacher, was gentle and curious, often seeing things in people that others missed. They had no children of their own, but years of mentoring had made them natural nurturers. Mrs. Langford led them through the corridors of the orphanage with measured optimism. She mentioned Emily cautiously, knowing the couple might fall for the child just as others had, and possibly face the same rejection. But Ben and Claire had read Emily's profile. They had seen her drawings online. A few crayon pieces posted anonymously by the staff as part of the orphanage's adoption outreach. They were already drawn to her quiet presence and had asked to meet her first. In the playroom, Emily sat on the floor, cross-legged, organizing colored pencils by shade. When Claire greeted her, Emily looked up and smiled, then returned to her task without a word. "Hi, Emily," Claire said gently, crouching to her level. "I'm Claire, and this is Ben. We came to spend some time with you, if that's okay." Emily nodded, offering no more than that, but she didn't retreat either. Over the course of the afternoon, they talked about colors, animals, and favorite seasons. Emily responded in short phrases, always courteous, always composed. She accepted a sketchbook from Ben with a small thank you and listened to Claire read her a chapter from a children's novel. At the end of the visit, she stood and said, "It was nice to meet you," and walked back to her room. Claire felt her heart tug in ways she hadn't expected. Ben was quieter than usual on the drive home. "She's different," Claire said finally. "She's hurting," Ben replied, "but she's not broken." 2 weeks later, the Whitmans returned. This time, they stayed longer. They played board games, shared cookies, and brought books. Emily spoke more, even laughed once. When Ben showed her how to make a paper swan from a napkin, her eyes lit up for a fleeting moment. Claire took it as a victory. The visits continued, and something fragile began to bloom. Emily never spoke about her past, and the Whitmans never pushed. They let her set the pace. Eventually, after 2 months of weekly visits, they asked if she would like to come live with them, if she would let them become her parents. Emily didn't answer right away. She tilted her head, as if weighing something invisible. Then, with the same calm tone she'd used 5 times before, she said, "No, thank you." The room went silent. Claire's eyes widened, but she caught herself before speaking. Ben exhaled slowly. Emily stood up, smoothed the hem of her dress, and added, "I like you both, but I can't go. Mrs. Langford, who had been watching from the doorway, said nothing. Her expression was unreadable. Outside, the sky had turned gray. Rain tapped gently against the window panes. "Emily," Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I ask why?" The girl looked at her for a long time, as if deciding whether or not to answer. Finally, she said, "Because you didn't ask what I wanted." And then she walked away. Claire sat in stunned silence, the weight of Emily's words settling in her chest like stone. Ben reached for her hand, but didn't speak. In that moment, neither of them felt rejected. They felt challenged. Emily wasn't waiting to be saved. She was waiting to be understood. And perhaps, just maybe, it wasn't too late for that. The next week, the Whitmans returned to Willow Creek Orphanage, but this time not with paper promises or plans. They came empty-handed, save for a single bag filled with old children's books and a box of colored origami paper. The air was different, quieter, more uncertain. Claire's expression carried a seriousness that hadn't been there before, and Ben's steps felt slower, more deliberate. They had spoken little since Emily's refusal, not out of frustration, but out of reflection. Her words had struck something vital, an absence they hadn't noticed in themselves. It wasn't about their intentions or their efforts. It was about her voice. Mrs. Langford met them at the door, studying their faces as if trying to guess whether they'd return to say goodbye or to try again. When Claire asked if they could spend time with Emily with no talk of adoption, no expectations, just conversation and company, Mrs. Langford granted the request with a small, approving nod. "She's in the reading room," she said. "It's quiet this time of day. She likes it that way." Inside the softly lit room, Emily sat curled into the corner of an oversized armchair, a book open on her lap. The window behind her framed the golden afternoon light, and for a moment, she looked almost like a painting. Still, self-contained, unreachable. Claire approached first. "Hi, Emily," she said, setting the bag down gently. "We brought a few books." And Ben brought paper. He said he wants to show you how to make something new today. Emily looked up, not surprised, not excited, but open. "Okay," she said simply. They sat together on the floor, the thick carpet muffling every movement. Claire read from a picture book, while Ben began folding cranes from the pastel paper. Emily listened quietly, sometimes glancing at the creases in Ben's work, sometimes tracing her fingers along the edge of the book. She didn't say much, but she didn't retreat either. That was enough. As the hour passed, Emily leaned in closer. She folded a paper flower under Ben's guidance and laughed when it didn't quite hold its shape. Claire smiled but didn't interrupt. It was the first time she had heard that laugh. Not the polite one they'd heard before, but a soft, unscripted sound that felt like a door cracking open. At one point, Claire set the book down and looked at Emily carefully. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her tone light but not careless. Emily looked up. Claire continued. "The other day, when you said no, you said we didn't ask what you wanted." Emily nodded, her hand still busy with a piece of red paper. Claire hesitated. "So, what do you want, Emily?" The girl didn't answer right away. She folded, unfolded, then folded again. Finally, she set the paper aside, sat up straight, and looked at them both with an unsettling calm. "Since I was 6, she began, her voice quiet but firm, "I've told everyone the same thing. I don't want to change my name. I want to keep being Emily Harper. And I want my drawing book, the one I had with my mom. That's all." Claire blinked, stunned by the clarity. Ben sat up straighter, his face growing serious. "Your drawing book?" he asked gently. Emily nodded. "It's brown, leather, worn out. I had it when I came here, but then they said I had to give it up. They said new families wanted everything clean, fresh, like a new start." She paused, as if weighing how much to say. "But I didn't want to start over. I just wanted a new place to live, not a new self." The room felt heavier. Claire's heart twisted. "And no one listened to you?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "They said it was small stuff," Emily replied, eyes steady. "But it wasn't small to me. That book has drawings of me and my mom, things she taught me. And my name is all I have left that still belongs to them." Ben looked at Claire, then back at Emily. "Emily Harper," he said slowly, as if tasting the name for the first time. "That's who you are." The girl didn't respond, but her shoulders dropped ever so slightly, as if something invisible had been lifted. After that day, their visits became more regular, less structured. They stopped bringing gifts and instead brought consistency. Claire began reading her chapters from longer books, letting Emily pick the next story. Ben brought more complicated origami, frogs, dragons, even a giraffe. Emily started bringing her own paper. She never spoke again about her drawing book, but Claire noticed how often her eyes scanned the room when something reminded her of it. Once, when a story mentioned a mother baking cookies, Emily went silent for several minutes, then quietly asked if memories could disappear if no one else remembered them. "No," Claire said gently. "They don't disappear, but they do get quieter if you stop visiting them." Emily nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. During one visit, they brought lunch and sat under the old tree behind the orphanage. The sun filtered through the branches, and the wind carried the scent of spring. Emily, eating quietly, suddenly said, "My mom used to hum when she cooked. I don't remember the song, just the sound." Claire didn't reply. She simply hummed a soft, simple tune. Not any song in particular, just a melody, warm and unhurried. Emily listened. She didn't cry, didn't smile. She just listened, as if holding on to something fragile. Ben reached over, folded a tiny paper heart, and set it beside her on the picnic blanket. Emily looked at it, then at him. "Do you remember everything about your mom?" she asked. Ben paused. "Not everything, but I remember how she made me feel. Safe, wanted, like I could mess up and she'd still be there." Emily was quiet for a long time after that. When they stood to leave, she handed Ben the little paper heart he had folded. "You can keep it," she said, "for next time." And just like that, the walls she had built began to thin, not with declarations or grand moments, but with shared silence, patient company, and the quiet acknowledgement that her story mattered just as it was. A gray rain stretched in across the windows of the orphanage the following Tuesday, drumming a soft rhythm against the glass like an echo of thoughts no one had spoken aloud. Emily sat near the window in the art room, her knees tucked to her chest, watching the drops race each other down the pane. She had skipped breakfast that morning, though not out of sadness, more like a preoccupation that weighed her limbs. The room around her smelled faintly of paint and sharpened pencils, but she hadn't drawn in days. Her hands, usually so quick to reach for color, remained still on her lap. Down the hall, Claire walked slowly beside Mrs. Langford. Their conversation was hushed, but serious. "She trusts you," the director said, glancing toward the glass window where Emily sat alone. "That's more than she's ever offered anyone." Claire nodded. "That's why we're here again. There's something we didn't know until last time, something important." She paused, gathering her words. Emily talked about a drawing book, a leather one. She said she had it when she arrived, but it was taken. Mrs. Langford's expression shifted slightly, the way someone's face changes when they suddenly remember something they had buried beneath 100 more urgent things. "That would have been 5 years ago," she murmured. "She came in the middle of the night. It was cold. She clung to a blanket and a worn-out sketchbook. I remember because she wouldn't let go of it at first. And then," Ben asked, stepping closer. The director sighed. "Back then, we had a different intake process. It was stricter. New arrivals were asked to leave personal belongings behind. Nothing damaged, nothing distressing for the child or their new family. The idea was to help them move forward, to keep things neat." She shook her head. "I didn't realize how deeply she cared about that book. I think it was placed in the storage room. Or maybe it ended up in the donations box. I honestly don't know." Ben's jaw tightened, but he stayed composed. Claire was the first to speak. "Can we check? Even if it's old, damaged. If it's hers, we'd like to return it to her." Mrs. Langford nodded and led them down a narrow corridor behind the staff office, where old files, seasonal decorations, and forgotten boxes gathered dust. The storage room smelled of cardboard and time. For the better part of an hour, the three of them sifted through bins, one by one, toys from another era, books with frayed covers, mismatched shoes. At one point, Ben pulled out a plastic bag of children's drawings. Faded stick figures, finger paints, traced hands labeled with long-forgotten names. Then Claire saw it. Near the bottom had been marked non-essential personal items, tucked beneath a tangle of scarves and cracked photo frames. She found a thin leather-bound book. Its spine was worn, corners bent, and a faint initials embossing could still be made out. E.H. She opened it slowly. The first page was a drawing of a house. Not just any house. It had the unmistakable warmth of being drawn from memory. Flowers in a crooked garden. Smoke curling from the chimney. 2 stick figures stood by the front door, a tall woman with a braid, and a smaller figure with pigtails. The next page showed the same 2 figures holding hands beneath a sun that took up half the sky. And page after page unfolded like a visual diary, not just childish doodles, but evidence of a bond too strong to fit into words. Claire held the book to her chest and closed her eyes. They didn't tell Emily immediately. That day, they spent time with her as usual, folding paper, reading, sitting in shared silence. But there was something charged in the air, like a secret humming beneath the surface. Emily didn't speak of her book again, but the set of her shoulders suggested it was always somewhere in her mind. It was the next Saturday when Ben and Claire returned with a small box. Claire carried it delicately, like one would carry something sacred. They found Emily in the courtyard, curled up with a novel under the tree. The sun peeked through clouds, and the grass still held the damp scent of the last rain. "Hey, Emily," Ben said softly. She looked up. "Hi." Claire knelt in front of her and placed the box between them. "We were hoping to show you something, but only if you want to see it." Emily studied the box, her eyes narrowing slightly, not with suspicion, but with careful attention. She set her book aside and opened the lid. For a long moment, she didn't breathe. The sketchbook lay nestled in soft tissue paper. Its leather cover was faded, but unmistakable. Her hand moved toward it, almost afraid to touch. Then she picked it up, ran her fingers over the cover, and opened to the first page. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She turned the pages slowly, one by one, the way someone handles something both precious and fragile. Her voice came barely above a whisper. "You found it?" Claire nodded. "We looked everywhere." Ben added, "We didn't know how much it meant to you. We should have asked sooner." Emily blinked rapidly. "No one ever looked before. They always said I should forget." "Well," Claire said, her voice unsteady with emotion, "we don't want you to forget. We want you to keep everything that matters to you. Your name, your drawings, your memories." Ben pulled something from his pocket and handed it to her. A folded sheet of paper, stamped and signed at the bottom. Emily unfolded it carefully. Her eyes scanned the text until they reached a line that read, "Name of child, Emily Harper Whitman." She stared at it. "You left my name?" "We added ours to it," Ben said, "but we didn't take yours away." Emily clutched the paper, then the book, her hands trembling. For the first time since they had met, her composure cracked. A tear traced down her cheek, then another, and she didn't wipe them away. She didn't speak right away. She didn't need to. Claire reached for her hand, but stopped, giving her space. Then Emily stood, holding the book to her chest, and stepped forward. She wrapped her arms around both of them, tight, fierce, unapologetic. Her voice came in a whisper. "Now I can go." The paperwork was finalized 3 weeks later. But for Emily, the moment her life truly shifted wasn't in an office, nor beside a signature. It happened on a quiet Wednesday morning, when the sky was clear and the sun cast long, golden rays across the Willow Creek courtyard. That morning, Ben and Claire arrived early, not with gifts or files, but with breakfast pastries, a thermos of warm cocoa, and a look on their faces that said they were no longer visitors. They sat together at the old picnic table beneath the maple tree, now shedding its first autumn leaves. Emily joined them in silence, her sketchbook clutched under one arm, the name Harper Whitman already beginning to settle into her bones like something both new and familiar. Claire laid out the pastries and poured the cocoa, speaking in soft, even tones. "We don't want a day to feel big and official," she said. "We know you've already said yes. but we also know what that yes costs you. Emily listened carefully, the way she always did, eyes steady, expression neutral, every word weighed before she decided how to respond. She nodded slowly. "It didn't cost me this time," she said. "You brought everything with you, even the parts one thought were gone." Ben leaned in slightly, his elbows resting on the table. "We were talking last night," he said, "about how families grow, how sometimes they stretch to fit. And we realized we didn't just want to be your new parents. We wanted to build a life around what already matters to you." Claire pulled a small envelope from her coat pocket and slid across the table. "This is for you." Emily hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a card with delicate handwriting. It read, "Your room is waiting, and on the wall, there's a space reserved for your drawings. All of them, if you want. We saved the first spot for your favorite one." The nameplate on the door says, "Emily Harper Whitman." We didn't want you to have to choose between the past and the future, so we made space for both. Emily stared at the card, rereading the lines. Then she looked up, eyes glassy but clear. "You didn't just listen," she said. "You changed things." "We tried," Claire said, "because you matter, and your story matters." Later that afternoon, the official adoption meeting was held in a modest courtroom in the county building. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic moments. Just a quiet judge who smiled more than most, and a few staff members from the orphanage who had watched the entire process unfold. Mrs. Langford was among them. Her normally composed demeanor softened with emotion. She had seen hundreds of adoptions in her career, but none quite like this. When the judge asked if Emily understood the decision she was making, Emily didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, "and I'm ready." He looked at her kindly. "Do you want to say anything before we sign?" Emily thought for a moment, only that I didn't think anyone would wait long enough to hear me. But they did, and now I know I don't have to stop being who I was to start being someone new. The judge nodded and signed the document. Just like that, it was official. That night, as they drove away from Willow Creek for the last time, the orphanage grew smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely. Emily sat in the back seat, her sketchbook open on her lap, the pages fluttering slightly with the wind from the half-open window. Claire turned back from the passenger seat. "Do you want to stop anywhere on the way home?" Emily looked out the window for a moment. "Can we drive by the park at the lake?" she asked. "I used to go there with my mom and dad. I just want to see it again." "Of course," Ben said, adjusting the route without hesitation. The park was empty when they arrived. The water shimmered in the early evening light, and the old swing set still creaked in the wind. Emily stepped out of the car and walked slowly toward the lake's edge. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. She simply stood there for a while, remembering. Claire joined her after a few minutes. "You can come back here anytime," she said. "We'll bring you whenever you want." Emily nodded. "I think I'm ready to draw it now," she said. "I didn't want it before. It felt too far away." Back home, her new home, Emily was quiet at first. She explored the rooms like someone entering a library for the first time. Curious, cautious, respectful. Her bedroom was soft and warm, the walls painted in pale blue. The desk by the window was already stocked with art supplies, and above it, a corkboard waited for her drawings. A photo frame sat on the shelf, still empty. Ben stepped in after a while. "That frame is for your favorite memory," he said. "It doesn't have to be from now. It can be from before, or even something you imagine." Emily walked over and touched the frame. "I think I'll draw something for it." And she did. The next morning, she was up early, already sketching by the window. Her first drawing in the new house was of the lake, with two figures standing near the water's edge, one tall, one small, both holding a piece of paper between them, like a shared memory. At breakfast, she placed it in the frame. Ben looked at it, then at her. "That's beautiful." Emily smiled, the kind that didn't just touch her lips, but warmed the room. "I didn't lose my family," she said. "I just added to it." By mid-November, the days in northern Ohio grew shorter, with the sunlight turning pale and brittle in the late afternoons. Inside the Whitman household, however, warmth bloomed in quiet, continuous ways. through the clatter of mugs being filled with hot cocoa, the rustling of pages as Emily and Claire read together, and the soft scratch of pencil on paper as Emily filled her new sketchbooks, one after another. Her presence had woven itself into the rhythm of the home so subtly that it felt as if she had always been there. There was no performance, no effort to fit in, only the gentle unfolding of a child who had once refused the world and was now learning to trust again, one moment at a time. On most evenings, Ben and Claire gave Emily space to create, but they made it a habit to come together for dinner, a tradition that began without ceremony but quickly became sacred. Emily, who used to sit in silence and gnawed her way through conversations, now offered observations, sometimes about the story she was reading, other times about memories that had drifted back to her unannounced from the time before. One night, while helping Claire dry dishes, she asked, "Do you think people forget on purpose, or because they have to make room for new things?" Claire paused with a towel in her hand. "Maybe both," she answered. "Sometimes forgetting feels safer, and sometimes we just run out of room. But I think the important things always find a way back." Emily thought about that in silence. She never spoke of the orphanage anymore, but she hadn't erased it. She still used her old sketchbook, now repaired and rebound thanks to a local craftsman Ben had tracked down. She placed it next to her newer ones, not in a drawer or a box, but on her shelf, visible, respected, and never closed for long. School had been a new challenge. Emily had joined the local elementary halfway through the semester, and though the staff had prepared as best they could, the transition had its rough edges. The first week, she sat alone at lunch, always at the far end of the table, drawing. Other students watched from a distance, unsure how to approach the quiet girl with the serious eyes and the steady hands. But Emily never seemed bothered. She didn't seek attention. She simply observed. Then came the day when her class was given an assignment. Write a short essay about what family means to you. It was a project designed for the upcoming school fair, where students would read their pieces aloud to their peers and parents. Claire, upon hearing about the assignment, offered help. Emily declined politely. "I already know what I want to write," she said. For 3 nights, she sat at her desk after dinner, working in silence. Her writing notebook lay open beside her sketch pad, and sometimes she paused in her writing to draw a line, a shape, or a face. Ben walked past once and saw a pencil outline of 2 houses connected by a footbridge. He didn't ask. Emily didn't explain. On the day of the fair, the school auditorium was filled with folding chairs, streamers, and the unmistakable hum of children trying to stay still, while grown-ups smiled nervously from the crowd. Claire and Ben sat near the middle row, not talking much, just watching. Emily sat with her class, her hair neatly braided, her expression unreadable. When her name was called, she walked the stage with steady steps. No hesitation, no glancing back. She stood behind the podium, unfolded her page, and began. "My name is Emily Harper Whitman. I used to live in a house with a garden and a blue door. My mom had long hair, and she liked to hum while she cooked. My dad told stories about stars and taught me how to draw hands. Then one night, that house wasn't ours anymore, and my name felt like something I had to carry alone." She paused, looking at the audience. A few parents leaned forward. I lived in a place where people tried to help me, and I'm grateful they did. But I said no to every family who came to adopt me. Not because I didn't want love, but because I didn't want to forget what I already had. My name, my memories, my story. Ben swallowed hard. Claire gripped his hand. "Then 2 people came," Emily continued, "and they didn't ask me to leave anything behind. They didn't ask me to change. They brought me back my name. They found my old drawings. They told me I didn't have to start over. I could just start from here." Her voice was clear, but her hands trembled slightly as she turned the page. "My family didn't replace the one I lost. They became part of it, like a second chapter in a book I thought had ended. I still talk to my first mom and dad at night when I pray. I still call them mom and dad. But now, I have people who make me pancakes on Saturdays and read with me when it rains. I call them my home." The room was silent. A few sniffles echoed softly from the back rows. "My name is still Emily Harper," she said, "but now it's also Whitman. And that doesn't make me less theirs. It just means I've grown. She folded the paper, stepped back, and walked off the stage. There was no applause at first, just a pause, thick with emotion. Then, slowly, the room erupted into clapping, not loud or raucous, but full of something deeper than politeness. Claire had tears running down her cheeks. Ben didn't try to hide his. After the fair, as the crowd dispersed and parents gathered their children, several teachers approached Claire and Ben, each with some version of the same phrase. She reminded us why we do this. Emily, meanwhile, remained composed, returned to her seat, and collected her things like nothing unusual had happened. It wasn't until they were walking to the car that she turned to Ben and said, "Do you think my parents heard that?" He didn't hesitate. "I know they did." Emily looked up at the sky. A faint crescent moon just beginning to rise. "I think so too," she said. "It felt like they were right there with me." At home that night, she placed her essay in the empty photo frame on her shelf, beside her drawing of the lake. It wasn't just something she had written. It was something she had lived, and now it belonged there, with the rest of her story, safe and never forgotten.